drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% rate in April.
Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like this number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang. Gyeonggi, a city that holds 1,000 years of history. The cherished values, preserved over time, have shaped who we are today. Now, through new encounters, we step into a better future. Sustainability, innovation. With the spirit of connection, a new millennium story begins. As APEC and Gyeonggi come together. APEC meets Gyeonggi.
In our headlines on this Wednesday, November 5th, here in South Korea, the benchmark KOSPI index loses tremendous ground during trade earlier this morning, prompting a sidecar amid investor concerns over overheated artificial intelligence valuations. Meanwhile, the political battle resumes in full force over the government's budget for next year as a public hearing kicks off today with economic experts sharing their thoughts on the long-term fiscal soundness of the spending plan. Over in the U.S., the government shutdown there enters its 36th day on this Wednesday to become the longest in American history amid the standoff of the Democrats' demand for an extension of Affordable Care Act subsidies. For the first time in 7 months, the South Korean stock market saw its sidecar activated as its benchmark index plunged over 6% during morning trade. Our Park Jin-an covers the action on the local bourse and on the forex market.
South Korea's benchmark KOSPI showed extreme volatility on Wednesday, with the index declining over 6% at one point during the morning. Amid the sharp decline, a sidecar was triggered, a measure that's activated when the KOSPI 200 futures index rises or falls by 5% or more for at least 1 minute. The sell-off mirrored an overnight decline in U.S. markets, where major indices, including the Nasdaq, fell over 2% as profit-taking hit technology stocks. Global tech stocks are showing volatility amid concerns that massive AI investments could lead to a bubble with limited real productivity. The index, however, recovered some of its losses during trading in the afternoon and closed at over 4,004 points, 2.85% lower than Tuesday's close.
Since September, South Korean stocks have been rising without much of a break, creating a sense of price fatigue and pressure. At the same time, U.S. tech stocks have shown increased volatility, and as a result, profit-taking moves occurred among some of the KOSPI stocks that had risen sharply, leading to today's larger decline.
Also on Wednesday, the dollar-won exchange rate hit a 7-month high, with the U.S. dollar closing around 1,450 Korean won. An expert says the U.S. central bank is signaling slower rate cuts, a key factor for Korea's foreign exchange market, given that the U.S. key interest rate remains higher than that of South Korea's.
As expectations for U.S. rate cuts have somewhat eased, while the U.S. economy remains solid, I think the market is reflecting that sentiment. Also, with rising volatility in risk assets like Bitcoin and stocks, investor preference for safer assets, such as the dollar, seems to have grown stronger.
Meanwhile, a securities strategist added that despite strong earnings and guidance, valuation pressures and concerns over an AI-driven bubble have weighed on investor sentiment, particularly among major tech stocks, adding to the volatility across global markets. Park Jin-an, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, at the Nat'l Assembly, lawmakers are looking to lock horns over the government's budget proposal for next year as deliberations begin with a public hearing, including economic experts. Our political correspondent An Sung-jin has the latest.
The political battle has reignited over the 2026 budget review. The review kicked off with a public hearing on Wednesday at the National Assembly. The Special Committee on Budget and Accounts invited economic experts who presented analysis on the fiscal outlook and further discussed the potential economic stimulus and the long-term fiscal soundness of the proposed spending. The committee will be incorporating these expert opinions into its subsequent deliberations. This comes after President Lee Jae-myung announced the government's first full-year budget proposal in his policy speech on Monday. The budget plan, which is proposed as some 728 trillion won, or over $503 billion, is an 8.1% increase from this year's spending plan. Following the hearing on Wednesday, lawmakers are scheduled to hold comprehensive policy inquiries till the end of the week, followed by ministry-by-ministry budget reviews. With the ruling party vowing to defend the government's original proposal and the opposition calling for cuts to what they call cash handouts, the political battle is to continue. With both sides refusing to back down, the budget standoff is expected to drag on until the deadline on December 2nd. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea's foreign exchange reserves rose for the fifth month in a row in October. According to the Bank of Korea, the reserves hit $428.82 billion at the end of October, up $6.8 billion on month. Now, this sum is the highest since January 2023, when reserves reached nearly $430 billion. The central bank links the rise to stronger investment returns and new foreign currency-denominated forex stabilization bonds. As of the end of September, South Korea ranked 9th worldwide in foreign exchange reserves. Intelligence authorities here in South Korea believe North Korea is subtly but tangibly preparing for potential talks between its leader, Kim Jong-un, and his U.S. counterpart, Donald Trump. Our Moon Hye-ryun reports.
Though an anticipated U.S.-North Korea summit encounter at the APEC leaders' meeting ultimately failed to materialize, South Korea's spy agency says Pyongyang had been quietly positioning itself for the possibility. According to briefings delivered during the National Assembly's audit of the National Intelligence Service on Tuesday, North Korea showed multiple signs of preparing for potential dialogue with Washington behind the scenes, even as it remained publicly unresponsive to repeated overtures. The NIS confirmed indications that Pyongyang had been adjusting its diplomatic posture, including Kim Jong-un's deliberate restraint from making provocative remarks on nuclear armament, to avoid antagonizing the United States. The agency also cited North Korea's efforts to analyze the policy stances of U.S. officials handling North Korea affairs and to gather information on influential figures in Washington as evidence of quiet preparation.
Although the APEC-related summit did not happen, various channels have confirmed that North Korea had been preparing behind the scenes for dialogue with the United States. The NIS believes Kim Jong-un intends to engage in talks and will seek contact once conditions are met.
The agency also sees early next year as a potential turning point. With the South Korea-US joint military exercises scheduled for March, the NIS says that period could determine whether high-level talks, possibly even at a summit level, become feasible.
We expect and judge the possibility to be quite high that U.S.-North Korea relations could improve next year, even advancing to a summit-level meeting. After the 9th Party Congress, another military parade, and the joint exercises in March, there may be an appropriate moment to explore or sense the possibility depending on how circumstances unfold.
As for Kim Jong-un's health, long a subject of speculation, the NIS reported no major abnormalities, saying he appears to be carrying out both provincial and Pyongyang-based activities without difficulty. Moon Hye-ryun, Arirang News.
The U.S. says sanctions will remain a strategy against North Korea's nuclear weapons program, even amid efforts to engage with the regime. That being said, an additional 8 people and 2 entities have been slapped with sanctions. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
The United States has announced new sanctions on individuals and institutions accused of helping North Korea launder billions of dollars stolen through cybercrime operations. According to the U.S. Treasury Department on Tuesday, 8 people and 2 firms are being sanctioned for channeling money from cyber heists and IT fraud to finance North Korea's nuclear weapons program. Among those sanctioned are North Korean bankers Chang Guk-chul and Heo Jung-sun, who allegedly managed more than $5 million in cryptocurrency connected to the sanctioned First Credit Bank. Washington says over the past 3 years, North Korean hackers have stolen and laundered more than $3 billion in digital assets, the largest amount linked to any foreign actor. U.S. Treasury Undersecretary for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence John K. Hurley said the regime's hackers steal and launder money to fund nuclear development. The department said the network operates across China, Russia, and other countries, using shell companies and foreign banks to disguise the source of funds. The latest sanctions come as U.S. President Donald Trump said sanctions would remain a key part of any dialogue with Pyongyang. After the collapse of a possible U.S.-North Korea summit during Trump's recent visit to Asia, Washington moved quickly to expand sanctions, signaling stronger pressure on the regime. 이승재, Arirang News.
In other news, the U.S. Navy's nuclear-powered aircraft carrier has docked at the southern coast of South Korea in a show of strength and commitment to the bilateral alliance. According to South Korea's Navy on this Wednesday, the USS George Washington has docked at Busan Naval Operations Base to replenish supplies and to rest. The four-vessel carrier strike group also includes the USS Robert Smalls, a guided missile cruiser, and two destroyers, that is, with Aegis combat systems. The port call is expected to enhance military exchanges and strengthen the combined defense posture of the ROK-US alliance. The U.S. is experiencing its longest government shutdown in history, and most voters who took to polling stations this past Tuesday appear to have stood against the ruling party, blaming it for the political standoff. Our Pyongyang explains.
U.S. President Donald Trump is demanding Republicans end the Democratic filibuster by invoking what he calls the nuclear option, which will lower the threshold for passing bills from 60 votes to a simple majority. Trump warned on Truth Social that if the filibuster isn't terminated, the Democrats may be more likely to win the midterms and the next presidential election. He argued that without ending the rule, his administration's agenda, from tax cuts to tighter border control, would be blocked for years. But Senate leaders have resisted, saying such a move would destroy bipartisan traditions and ultimately backfire. That debate now comes amid a political setback for the White House. In Tuesday's elections, seen as an early test of Trump's second term, Democrats swept key races, winning the governorships in Virginia and New Jersey, and taking New York City's mayoral seat with progressive lawmaker Zohran Mamdani, the city's first Muslim mayor. In Virginia, former Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger became the state's first female governor, flipping the seat long held by Republicans. Analysts say the results may signal voter frustration with Trump's shutdown politics, serving as an early referendum on his leadership ahead of next year's midterms. With the government still shuttered and the opposition emboldened, the record shutdown and the filibuster showdown are shaping up to be a political test of Trump's second term. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
And in related news, the mayoral election in New York did indeed receive much attention and continues to do so as a young Democrat running on a progressive agenda beat the odds to win the race. Our Kim Do-yeon has more.
Zohran Mamdani has been elected as the 111th mayor of New York City. On Tuesday, the 34-year-old Democratic candidate also became the first Muslim and Indian American to fill the role to lead the biggest city in the U.S. in one of the biggest upsets in U.S. election history.
Tonight, against all odds, we have grasped it. The future is in our hands. My friends, we have toppled a political dynasty.
The voter turnout on Tuesday was also the highest the city has seen in 50 years, with more than 2 million votes cast. Of that, Mamdani won with a commanding lead with over 50% of all votes. During his campaign, Mamdani, a state lawmaker from Queens and a Democratic socialist, proposed a rent freeze, making all city buses fast and free, establishing city-run grocery stores to lower food costs, and providing universal child care. He also called for raising taxes on corporations and the wealthy to pay for these left-wing policies. In February of this year, an Emerson College poll showed that Mamdani had a 1% approval rating. In June, as a major upset, Mamdani won the Democratic primary, defeating Andrew Cuomo, who had 33% in that poll in February. Cuomo, however, continued his campaign as an independent, setting up a three-way general election with Republican Curtis Sliwa. Progressive politicians showed support after the win. Notably, Bernie Sanders posted on X congratulating Mamdani and said, "Yes, we can create a government that represents working people and not the 1%. Mamdani will take the post officially on January 1st, 2026. 김도현, Arirang News.
And back here in Seoul, Namsan Park has opened a new hiking trail that is accessible to even those with mobility challenges. Our Ian covers this latest attraction at the iconic tourist destinations.
At the entrance, there's a statue of a magpie wearing the traditional Korean hat called a gat, welcoming visitors to the new trail. Home to the iconic Seoul Tower, Seoul opened the new Namsan Sky Forest Trail on October 25th. The 1.45-kilometer trail connects the Namsan Fitness Zone to the Namsan Public Library. The trail not only offers a refreshing panoramic view with Gwanaksan Mountain to the left and Yeongjong Island to the right, but there are also hands-on experience points along the path, and even a short suspension bridge that sways gently, adding thrill to the walk. It takes roughly 20 to 30 minutes for the average adult to walk the full length of the trail. The trail has been designed for all to use, young or old, and its improved accessibility also allows those using wheelchairs or strollers to enjoy the walk. Along the path, there's even what's being called a hotel for the insects, designed for the endangered insect species. To help preserve the ecosystem, an additional 400 young Namsan pine trees were planted.
This area used to be overrun with invasive plants and tangled vines that choked the trees. Full of dead trees, it was really messy. We cleaned it up completely and planted Namsan pine trees here.
With the global popularity of K-pop and K-dramas, both domestic and international visitors to Namsan have been increasing, turning it into a world-renowned landmark. Now, with the opening of the Sky Forest Trail, there's one more reason to enjoy visiting Namsan. 이은진, Arirang News.
And staying on the local front, one of the largest public libraries is open as of this past weekend on a trial basis with green initiatives and AI-based activities. Our Cha Yoon-kyung has more.
This is a newly built Gyeonggi Provincial Library in Gyeonggi Convergence Town. It covers an area of about 27,000 square meters and has 5 floors above ground and 4 below, making it the largest public library in the country, excluding the National Library. Since it is operated as a climate and environment library, the first and fourth floors feature specialized spaces for material on those topics. The use of disposable products is also kept to a minimum.
We're trying to minimize many of the items we've been using, such as papers used for information boards, book location printouts, and other disposable products.
On the second floor, there is a World Friends Book Village designed for children and families. It offers multilingual material from 22 countries, ranging from English to Vietnamese. There is also a service where AI learns family members' voices and reads books to children. On the first basement level, there is an AI studio where visitors can use 8 types of generative AI tool for free. The library features a spiral structure with no walls or doors, and each floor includes various hands-on and experimental spaces, making it a unique environment. Its opening hours are 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. from Tuesday to Friday and 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. The library will be operated on a trial basis until the end of the year and will officially begin full operation next year. 차윤경, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. In Israel on Tuesday, authorities said they received the remains of what is believed to be a dead hostage from Gaza under the U.S. brokered ceasefire that began last month. Officials said the coffin was transferred via the Red Cross in Gaza and taken to Israel's National Forensic Center in Tel Aviv for identification. If confirmed, it would leave 7 deceased hostages still in Gaza. The transfer follows earlier body returns on Sunday and last Thursday. Under the deal, 20 living and 28 deceased hostages were to be returned within 72 hours. All living hostages were freed on 13th of October in exchange for 250 prisoners and 1,718 detainees. Israel has also handed over the bodies of 270 Palestinians in previous exchanges linked to the truce. Authorities say coordination with the Red Cross will continue to identify and recover remaining bodies while the ceasefire remains in place. In the United States, former Vice President Dick Cheney, one of Washington's most influential and divisive figures, has died at the age of 84. Cheney's family said he passed away on Monday from complications of pneumonia and heart disease. Cheney served under President George W. Bush and was widely seen as the driving force behind America's war on terror after the 9/11 attacks. Critics accused him of shaping policies that led to the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan, the use of torture, and expanded surveillance of U.S. citizens. Before the White House, Cheney held senior government roles, including Defense Secretary under George H.W. Bush, and he later served as CEO of Halliburton. A statement from his family described Cheney as a man of courage, honor, and love for country. In Los Angeles, Hollywood stars gathered on Saturday night for the 2025 LACMA Art and Film Gala, raising $6.5 million for the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. Presented by Gucci and co-chaired by Leonardo DiCaprio and Eva Chow, the gala honored Black Panther director Ryan Coogler and artist Mary Corse for shaping modern culture. Guests filled the museum grounds as Doja Cat sparked the night with a high-energy set. LACMA's director Michael Govan hailed it as a celebration of creativity that can only happen in Los Angeles. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
These days, they're having large daily temperature differences between day and night. It started chilly this morning with a temperature of 5.7 degrees Celsius in Seoul, and it rose to 18 degrees in the daytime, widening the daily temperature gap by more than 10 degrees. Please take good care of your health to avoid catching a cold. It will continue to be mild during the day for the time being. The maximum temperature will rise to 19 degrees in Seoul both tomorrow and Friday, far exceeding the average for this time of year. Tomorrow morning will start cool at 7 degrees in Seoul, at 8 degrees in Gwangju, Daegu, and Gyeongju. Highs will top out at 19 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 20 degrees in Daegu. On Friday, there is rain forecast in the eastern parts of Gangwon-do province. Then it will rain occasionally throughout the country on Sunday, except for the eastern parts of Gangwon-do province. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session. Thank you for now.
81일 자연으로 다시 돌아간다.
이게 그 신발이구나.
100% 생분해야 되는 신발입니다.
야, 너무 신기하다. 엄마 커즈 검증 타임. Let's go.
저기 걸으면 이렇게 압력이 나올 거예요. 그래서 실제로 얼마만큼의 힘이 들어가고 스트레스를 몸에서 받는지도 다 측정을 하는 것이죠. 그래프를 보시면 달리기를 하고 근육의 활성도가 피로도가 왔기 때문에 떨어졌고 이제 리커버리 신발을 신고 휴식을 취하고 난 뒤에 데이터를 보시면 짧은 시간 안에 근 활성도가 현저히 증가한 것을 확인하실 수 있습니다. 그럼 결론적으로는 피로도가 리커버리 되었다.
Officially certified by the American Orthopedic Association and attracting global investors left and right. Finalists at the world's largest outdoor trade fair. How about a fast post-run recovery?
Korea, a globally recognized sports powerhouse. Behind the dazzling achievements, there's always an invisible force at work. With sophisticated materials, cutting-edge equipment, and innovative technological solutions, SMEs in the K-sports industry play a vital role in bolstering Korea's status as a sports powerhouse. By integrating AI technology, they unlock athletes' potential and enhance performance, elevating the sports environment to the next level and opening new markets in the sports industry. Their innovative technology and bold challenges drive the growth of Korea's sports industry, creating a better world through sports. The innovation of these SMEs never stops. A systematic partnership support program is implemented to discover promising sports SMEs, provide technical validation and R&D support to enhance competitiveness, and strengthen the foundation for overseas expansion. At Tokyo Sportech 2025, the technological prowess of Korean companies was recognized. The Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, and the Korea Sports Promotion Foundation supported K-sports companies with product promotion and business consultations with global buyers, demonstrating product quality and market potential, and confirming the possibility of expanding into the global market.
저희는 ICT 강국으로서 그 바이어나 사용자들한테 신기술을 접목한 생활 스포츠 기회를 실질적으로 확대할 수 있는 그 기회를 제공하는데 많은 도움이 될 수 있으리라고 확신을 합니다.
이제 스포츠도 K죠. K 스포츠는 이겁니다.
The joy for all, created by the power of K-sports. Experience the future of the new sports industry through the innovation and technology of the Korean sports industry.
South Korea's cultural diplomacy was on full display during its hosting of APEC multilateral meetings in the historic city of Gyeonggi. We have more on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Press Perspective. It's Wednesday, November 5th here in Seoul. I'm Min-San Hee. K-culture took center stage amid South Korea's hosting of this year's APEC gathering. And for more on that, I have Stephen Borwick with Japanese weekly news magazine Nikkei Asia here in the studio. Stephen, welcome back.
Nice to be here, thanks.
I also have Jason Bechevaise, Assistant Professor at the Office of International Affairs at Hanyang University. Jason, Professor Bechevaise, it's lovely to have you with us.
Hello, yes, and thank you for having me once again.
We shall start here in the studio. Stephen, the Gyeonggi Declaration, it sheds light on the importance of cultural and creative industries as a new growth engine and stresses the importance of cooperation. All this being said, some are linking the success of South Korea's hosting of the APEC gathering to the soft power of its culture. What have been some of your observations on the ground in Gyeonggi last week?
Well, I thought Gyeonggi was a good place to host it for a number of reasons. Just because, I mean, a lot of people who fly in for these kinds of things are on pretty tight schedules. They have a lot of deadlines and all the rest. But, you know, all you have to do is just kind of ride around Gyeonggi and you do get a sense of the history and the culture that's kind of woven into the place. It is a more kind of, it has a more character than like your average Korean city. You know, if just like on your way to the venue in the morning, you can come across some kind of nice old buildings nestled into the mountains that surrounded where the meeting went down, and a lot of the local restaurants, you know, they serve kind of traditional Korean cuisine in an idyllic setting. I always have to keep in mind that, like, you know, as I answer this question, like the organizing committees for something like APEC they're not trying to appeal to somebody like me or like Jason, like a Westerner who's lived here for a long time. They're trying to appeal to people who are, you know, kind of new in the country, and this might be their first exposure to Korea, and so they're trying to kind of bring people up to speed quickly. So. My other observation is just like in the media center at the APEC gathering on a daily basis, there were snacks with K-pop Demon Hunters branding on them, which, I mean, I thought was wise. For people like me who are there and who are away from our families, when we get back home, there's an expectation that we will arrive bearing gifts from our business trips. So I think there were probably a lot of journalists who, when they got back, they were able to share these K-pop Demon Hunters themed snacks and cakes with their kids. There were, in the media center, we received also some kind of skincare products, some facial masks. Those went over quite well with my wife. And I know that like traditional music and dance performances were part of some of the official proceedings, like after President Lee had his encounters with other world leaders. When they had dinners, there were performances and stuff. One thing I will say is, like, I always feel, and this is like me talking to someone who's lived here for a long time, there is this, when the Korean government is choosing like how to project the country culturally, I always feel like there is this kind of dichotomy between like the super modern, it's like the latest K-pop, it's the latest movies, the latest whatever it happens to be, and then there is the very traditional. There is the almost ancient, you know, kind of traditional forms of Korean dance and Korean music, and that's all well and good, but I always just feel like it kind of leaves out this long period of the country's history, which happens to be a really interesting part of the history. This is a country that rose from post-war poverty to be a manufacturing and a technological powerhouse. And I think if I was arriving in South Korea as someone without a lot of experience in the country, I would want to hear more about that. You know, I'd want to hear more cultural representations of the country's rise and, you know, what that has meant and what fueled that, and, you know, what are the changes that are observable on the ground compared to like how we see South Korea now to 10 or 20 or 50 years ago. Not just the ultra modern and not just the ancient. So, I suppose it goes from one spectrum to the other. Is that how it feels? It does. It does. It feels like there's this kind of like whole period in the middle that does not get a lot of official representation. It does get some. It's not like it's a totally ignored period of history, but. That's just one observation that I came with after my few days in APEC. And Jason, speaking as a scholar, would you link the success of South Korea's APEC hosting to K-culture?
Oh, absolutely. And it was, very much front and center, at APEC. I wasn't there down in Gyeonggi as much as I'd love to have been there. But yeah, you had significant talent there. You got G-Dragon who performed. There was Chaune, who he hosted a session down there. And you got Park Jin-young, who is co-chair of the Presidential Committee on Popular Culture Exchange. He was there meeting, world leaders alongside President Lee Jae-myung. So, there clearly was an effort there to project Korea's kind of soft power, and that has been a big part of, the current administration. I think they're trying to seek, to become, in that top 5 cultural powers of the world in terms of culture industry. They're seeking 50 trillion won worth of exports by 2030, I think. And, there's been frequent mention of the cultural industry, from the administration. I think President Lee Jae-myung was at Arirang, talking about K-pop demon hunters. And it makes sense. It makes total sense, given, how popular the cultural industry is. I see it here every day, teaching students from all over the world. And it's great to see, Korea following, countries like the UK that, punch above their weight when it comes to culture. And, that was very much evident, I think, down in Gyeonggi this year.
Right. Stephen, I'd like to expand on something you touched upon earlier. Quite a number of K-beauty and food products received renewed global attention thanks to the interest by the foreign delegates to the APEC forum. Could you walk us through some of that?
Well, I heard of a couple of examples. One was Canadian First Lady Diana Carney. I believe she left the country with a kind of list of recommendations for must-buys from Olive Young, the ubiquitous Korean retail chain. What would you call Olive Young? Is it a drugstore? Is it a beauty store? I mean, I guess it's
yeah.
I guess it's a drugstore. They do have medicine and personal care items and things like that. But yeah, it's a place that I think a lot of foreign visitors to Korea are definitely drawn to. And the other one was White House Press Secretary Karen Leavitt. She, I think it was an Instagram story. She posted a shot of a bunch of different beauty products that she had picked up while she was here. I mean, that's inevitable. I think we hear a lot about the wonders of Korean skincare. I gotta admit, I'm not really able to talk about the individual purchases that Ms. Leavitt made, and I can't really. I've never used any of these things, so I don't really know just exactly what her customer satisfaction will be. But there were others. There was getting into food. There was NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang was photographed having a kind of informal business meeting, enjoying fried chicken and beer with some South Korean business titans. Right near where the media center let out, there was this kind of, I thought it was a wisely placed, it was kind of a Korean food square, and they had all these food trucks that had instant noodles and a number of other things. One of the things on offer there were, one of the Korean major chains was providing samples of fried chicken, so you could get hungry journalists leaving the press room and going to get their shuttle buses at night, and I enjoyed some pretty tasty wings as a late night snack a couple times. That was good. And more and more, I think when people get the cultural value of this is that people go home and they tell their friends and acquaintances at home of the things that they experience in Korea, and I think it has a kind of a trickle-down effect.
And staying with food, Stephen, I understand that Korea's ramyeon, it's also receiving renewed attention by the foreign media. Yeah, I think that's in the movie K-pop Demon Hunters, there's I don't know if the specific, I got to admit, I've still not seen the movie, but the ramyeon is a kind of a magic power in this, in that before these musicians go on stage, they eat these instant noodles, and it maybe has some kind of talismanic power for them. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons why instant noodles are increasing in popularity nowadays. They provide an inexpensive and a convenient option. I mean, for people who are pressed for time, or people who are watching their budgets very carefully, all you need is some hot water and you can put this together. And I think the increased demand for these products is leaving a lot of companies to get even more creative in terms of the amount of the different kinds of flavor that they use. I mean, we were getting this
in APEC the free samples of this tumba sauce noodles, and there was some of the same companies were providing samples of like instant kimchi fried rice and things like that. So, I guess just the question is, like, we've seen such growth in the ramen sector over the past several years, decade or so. I wonder how sustainable this is, or we're going to reach a kind of market saturation, but time will tell. I'm interested to see how these companies will continue to experiment and like how they will try to meet the rising demand and try to keep it going with innovation and with more kind of creative applications of flavors and textures.
Yeah, for sure. Creative flavors, for sure. Jason, moving forward, Bloomberg recently published an article titled "The K in K-pop is already silent, and that's okay." What is the gist of this article, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, interesting. I mean, there's clearly a running theme of kind of internationalization of the K-content industry. And, this article stresses, K-pop's inclusivity whilst remaining true to its roots. This follows comments, I think, by Bang Si-hyuk, the CEO and founder of HYBE, formerly Big Hit, the company behind BTS. He wanted to lose the K in K-pop. And we're seeing groups, that some feature Korean members, but also, non-Korean members, Katseye, and, there's also Dear Alice as well, which is actually a K-pop group full of, boys from the UK. So, clearly we're entering a new phase, and I think K-pop is K-content, it's big enough now. It's not niche. It's no longer niche. It's big enough to incorporate, global elements, and it doesn't need, that K branding, so to speak, to further elevate it. And I think the internationalization of the whole K-content industry, is very much underway. I think K-pop is actually ahead, perhaps, of other areas of the industry, because like I said, you've got a lot of kind of non-Korean members part of the group. Many of them speak, they speak excellent Korean, but they're also fluent in English. And the K-pop industry has kind of had the global sights for a long time, and that's paid dividends. Obviously BTS, Blackpink, various other groups, aespa. There are just so many of them, and they're immensely popular overseas. And I think there's it's come to a point where, okay, can we remove the K? But I'm sure that's going to spark a lot of discussion. But I do talk to students, and there is concern that if when K-pop groups sing in English, perhaps they're not as appealing. And so I think that's something, an area of debate that will no doubt continue going ahead.
All right then, Jason, so that's with regard to the K in K-pop. What about the K in K-dramas and K-movies, Jason?
Okay, with regards to movies, I think this week, actually, we've got a couple of films which are international co-productions, which I do really think underscore where the industry is at right now. We've got Begonia, which is not a Korean film. This is a movie featuring, Emma Stone, directed by the Greek filmmaker Yorgos Lanthimos. But it's a remake of a South Korean film by Jang Jong-un, Save the Green Planet. And it's co-produced by CJ E&M, the company behind the original. So that's an international co-production. CJ, they're very much center of the K-content industry. And they have been pivoting towards global projects for some time now. And so that's out this week. And there's also a film called Leaving Mum, which is a South Korean Vietnam international co-production, and that's done really well in Vietnam. And so we're curious to see how well that does here. Korean content is, it's been targeting certain markets. It was targeting China for some time. Then it was Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Indonesia, and there's a lot of international co-productions going on. And I think we're seeing the fruition of that now. Of course, K-pop Demon Hunters is an American film, but obviously features a lot of Korean elements and Korean talent. There's also streaming content. So, I mean, K-pop Demon Hunters is streaming content. I'm talking about dramas, Tempest, which features Jung Ji-yeon and Kang Dong-won, along with many kind of non-Korean actors. There was Butterfly as well, which is set in Korea, starring Daniel Dae-kim, along with, many local talent. And yeah, I mean, there's just so many examples of like these kind of international co-productions. And I think that's, what we're going to see more of, this Romantics Anonymous, which is a Netflix series, a co-production between Japan and South Korea. So it's not just the United States, it's Japan, it's Vietnam, it's all over the place. And so that's a really interesting trend going on. And speaking of films as well, I think another development is animations. Animations are huge in the Korean market right now, especially Japanese anime. K-pop Demon Hunters is obviously a Korean, American animation, but we're also seeing Japanese anime proving quite popular in the local market. Like Demon Slayer, sold several million tickets, and I think 5 of the top 10 films a couple of weekends ago were animation. 3 were Japanese anime, 2 were local Korean film, local animation films. And Bong Joon-ho's new next movie is an animation. Nija 2 generated $2 billion. This is a Chinese animation generated $2 billion in China. So this is a wider trend, but it's one to look out for going ahead.
Right, and speaking about China, Stephen, the summit between the leaders of South Korea and China has further raised hopes for the full return of K-culture on Chinese stages. What has been the media coverage regarding this particular reality?
I think the media coverage has been highlighting that, as you say, these are still just hopes. President Lee and Xi Jinping had a very cordial summit, and they said all the right things. But there has not been, to my knowledge, there's not been like a formal or any real sign that this is going all the way back to normal. And that might just be kind of the way that China does business. I mean, it's not like there was ever a formal declaration that this ban existed in the first place. It was always something that was a little on a kind of de facto basis, or something that was implied or something that was understood. But I thought there was there was an article in the Hangul Shinmun written by a close sunbae of mine who I thought had some really interesting reporting and some interesting analysis. Just this article quotes an analyst who argues that the culture ban started as something that was a retaliation for South Korea deciding to deploy this U.S.-led missile defense system called THAAD. But over the years, it's kind of taken on a different shape, a different purpose. And this expert argues that now the Chinese authorities have come to kind of see this as useful for other reasons. They see it as a way of shielding the Chinese market from the very powerful influence of South Korean cultural goods. And that they could want to do that for any number of reasons. They could want to do that because it's just a kind of protectionist measure that might make it a little bit easier for Chinese filmmakers or Chinese music artists to carve out their own niche within the Chinese market, and kind of in a way that governments have always done, and South Korea doesn't do quite so much anymore, but have laws that exist to ward off space for the, I'm from Canada, there's Canadian cultural content laws. If you're on TV or on radio, there has to be a certain minimum amount of Canadian content. This cultural ban, or this de facto ban, has come to, have a little bit of that kind of protectionist character. And then there's also, we need to just understand the nature, the kind of authoritarian nature of the Chinese government, and that they may also see this as a way of protecting youth from, kind of pernicious outside influences, or, more kind of individualistic or whatever it might have you. Specifically, this analyst quoted in this article says that the influence of K-culture might inspire young people to kind of like form their own K-culture clubs, or like form their own groups, or kind of like form, civil society organizations that exist outside of the traditional power structure in China. And so I thought that was interesting. I mean, time will tell. I mean, I wonder if ties between South Korea and China, there's a number of things that they have to work out. I actually wrote an article just about this yesterday. China has still not formally lifted sanctions on South Korea's Hanwha Ocean. Just at APEC, I thought it was really interesting that when President Lee was in his meeting with Trump, when he was requesting permission to build nuclear-powered submarines, he specifically said that this would allow his country to more effectively track Chinese and North Korean submarines and thereby take some of the burden off of the U.S. military in East Asia. And then just a couple of days later, he was meeting with Xi, and he was, doing his best to project his country as a partner of the Chinese state. So, as always, interesting times.
Right, it is. And in the meantime, Jason, as I mentioned at the start of our talk, the Gyeonggi Declaration includes a clause highlighting the importance of cooperation with regard to the cultural and creative industries as the next growth engine. That being said, what do you believe are the assignments ahead as we look to advance these industries?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the film industry is really struggling. That needs to be a focal point for the government. They have turned to like mid-sized budget films, and they're going to help them and support them financially, which is encouraging. Because I was writing a piece recently, actually, about kind of streaming, about just the franchises on IP in the K-content industry, and what we're seeing now is films being adapted into series. The Manipulated, which drops on Disney Plus today, it's basically a reimagining of Fabricated City, which is a Korean film from a few years ago. And directors are migrating over to streaming platforms, and now we're seeing that IP going over to make series. And so it's great that K dramas are doing so well, but cinema is so important to the cultural industry, and that really needs to be supported. And we need films to be released, and making that comparison to K-pop. K-pop, you've got the first generation artists, second generation, third, fourth, and now I think we're in the fifth generation. With films, we have the 386 generation, that generation led by Bong Joon-ho, Park Chan-wook, Kim Ji-yoon. And the generations that have come after them have really struggled to hit the heights of that 386 generation. So that is the challenge for the government, to support young filmmakers and create an ecosystem where they can thrive.
Right. Hopefully they are listening to you as we speak. All right, Jason, Professor Bechervaise, thank you so much for your time and thoughts.
Thank you for having me.
Stephen here in the studio, thank you very much for your insights.
My pleasure.
Right, that ends this edition of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow for more panel discussion.
필라테스 기구는 전 세계에 4가지 기구가 있습니다. 캐딜락, 리포머, 배럴, 체어. 거기에서 할 수 있는 동작이 대략 한 2, 3천 개가 되는데